Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with Gary Vargas, Outreach Specialist, and Lloyd Lewin, Director of Outreach at the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Lloyd, you have been the Director of Outreach for how long?
Just coming up on 5 years.
5 years, and are you like the first person in this job, or is there someone who's been preceding you?
No, I'm not the first person. There's a person that predates me, Mr. Dennis Bedford. He was the Director of Outreach prior to me.
Okay, and what does youth empowerment do?
Well, I think one of the primary objectives of youth empowerment is to make sure that we're making connection with the youth, and then introducing programs and tools to help them sort of navigate some of the issues that some of the young people are having today. And so that's what it means to me. And it's sort of a broad overview.
Okay, and as an outreach specialist, what is your role?
I help facilitate groups. We case manage a number of students to keep them out of the court system. Those who are just dabbling into trouble at an early age. A lot of our referrals come from schools, parents, and even the court system of maybe younger siblings that may be headed down that path or may need some services to be a good citizen.
And when did you start becoming involved?
Well, I started working for the Boys and Girls Club part-time back in 2005, 2006, somewhere there. But before then, I worked with community impact programs in our first gang diversion program with Dennis Bedford, who eventually became the director for the youth outreach. We started the first gang diversion program, must have been 1986, 87, somewhere there.
And what prompted it?
There was a survey done, but even before that survey, there was a number of community incidents, just things that were gang related. For example, some of the kids weren't able to play on the playground. The gangs took over the playground. Parents were kind of complaining about their no safe place for our kids to go to in certain parts of the city of Kenosha.
And what did Dennis do at that time?
Dennis at that time, I worked for community impact programs as a youth worker, and Dennis worked with court services unit. He would supervise kids that were court ordered to, stay out of trouble, that kind of thing. And we joined forces by my case management caseload was a lot of the kids that Dennis gave me through the court services unit. So we worked together with a lot of those tough kids, a lot of the minority families for the most part. And from there, we got a grant, a $50,000 grant. I should say Human Services gave us a grant to kind of identify those areas that needed some attention dealing with the gang issues.
So you start with this survey from 1987, and then you and Dennis Bedford start this gang diversion project.
Correct. As a matter of fact, it was called Youth Project back then. It was a $50,000 grant. Questions were asked in 85 and 86. Does Kenosha have a gang problem? And we had to sell this to our, community leaders that we did. And that survey that was done by UW Parkside, Tejada, I believe it was her name, that put the study together. And we found out we had an influx of people coming from Illinois that were not just setting up shop, but looking for a better way of life. But yet, as we learned, this gang issue was like a cancer. And if you didn't address it right away, it just continued to grow and, destroy a community, destroy families, destroy our schools if you just went unaddressed.
Was this study determining whether or not there was a big problem, the beginning of a problem, or something that just had to be dealt with to
Well, one of the
reduce?
things that we found out even before the study, which was helpful, we found out that the gang problem had been there since 1980. So here we're looking at it, 6, 7 years later, and now we're playing catch up. So it was beneficial in that portion of it, but we really got into the history when we got to do the grassroots efforts and discussing with families what they saw, how long they've been here, maybe some of the police records of individuals that were arrested, that where their families came from. So the number of different agencies that were involved helped us figure out our history.
Okay, and you started the gang diversion program in
I want to say 86,
86?
Late 86.
And what were some of the programs that you?
Well, first of all was identifying kids.
Okay.
I mean, we just couldn't go out there and say, hey, we got a gang program, you want to come join?
How did you identify them?
Well, we had to get educated ourselves. For us to understand our problem, we had to go to the motherland to understand what was going on there. We had to go to Cabrini Green Project, Robert Taylor Wells home, those neighborhoods that basically was infested with it. So we had to try and understand that. So for about a year, we were being taught. And we found out, like I said, where the gang problem came from and what to look for, what they were wearing, what the graffiti was, what the colors meant. I mean, there was a time back in 85, 86 where breakdancing was the big thing and kids were wearing certain colors, but you couldn't use that just as one identifier. We find out you have to figure out some other things. What the kids saying about themselves. Why are they graffitiing? What does that graffiti mean? And so through about a year, I mean, we had to figure that out. And some of the trainings we went through with George Knox in Illinois, George Knox was a big help for us to learn, get certified as gang specialists, what to look for, but more importantly, how to attack it. How do we deal with this issue?
Okay. And what did you come away with?
Well, one thing we had to do was we are able to identify areas. That was crucial. And we found out where the gang issues were.
Okay. In the community?
In the community of Kenosha. And we found 3 areas. Bonnie Haynes, or the Wilson Heights area, the Lincoln neighborhood, and what we called Little Mexico back then, the Frank neighborhood area. They have gone through many transitions ever since, but nevertheless, we were able to identify those 3 areas.
Okay.
And from there...
Were each area different, or did they have similarities?
Similar in certain ways, gang membership, but different gangs. We had a lot of the Hispanic gangs in the Frank neighborhood. We had vice lords over on the north side. On the south side, we had a lot of gangster disciples. So with that, identifying those different pots of groups, we needed to get in there and start talking and identifying about who's at risk, who's not. The gang unit they had their role, kind of cleaning up whatever they could as far as adults. Our role was to identify young people and try to steer them away. And how we did that was with programming. We had to build a relationship with the neighborhood. The other part was the grassroots efforts of getting parents to say, we want to fight for our community. And if it wasn't for those parents, the Perry Whites of the world, Mary Lou Mahone over in the Lincoln neighborhood, just a number of people that came out, Walter Glass and Trendel's dad. Walter Vaughn. Those guys came out and said, hey, we don't want this in our neighborhood. So we started getting some people's, or community people, feedback that said, how can we help? And we were able to take down, well, they took down the basketball hoops on the playgrounds because they were basically places for the gangs to hang out. So we had to get those back. And so that was one of the first parts. If we were going to be on those playgrounds, though, we needed people who knew the neighborhood, people who the kids kind of looked up to. Even the older guys would kind of leave them alone. So we identified some kids, or not kids, young men who became summer camp counselors, lack of a better word, but people who would do programming with us. We took kids camping. We exposed them to a lot of different things, baseball games, Bucks games. We just took them out of the community, built a relationship with them, got to know the school personnel who helped us identify kids that needed assistance. So for, gosh, I must have done that till I left the agency. I want to say back in 2004. So we had done that, and the project was continuing even after I left.
Lloyd, when did you first become aware of the programs or become involved in any of the programs?
Well, I would say, just to add on to what Mr. Vargas said first, is, identify the young people, which is us. And once they identified us, but giving us something to do. I think that was the primary goal or objective, to give us something to do to stay out of trouble. Myself, I think I became involved in the program, I'm guessing it had to be around 88, 89.
How old were you at the time?
About 13, 12 years old.
And how did you become involved at 12 years old?
That's about the time that the gangs started recruiting you, even before that. And we just happened to live in one of those gang-infested neighborhoods.
Did you live in Kenosha at the time?
Well, at the time I did not. My parents had gotten divorced, but I still had to come visit. So I had to be here for the summer, and then the holidays, on those breaks. And so I was fortunate enough that they worked with my brother and a few of his friends, and those were my friends as well. And so whenever I did come visit, those are the people that I hang out with. And so they were gracious enough to always allow me to come with them when they did do things that when they got the young people together. So I was happy about that, and I think it really helped, because otherwise I would have been sort of left to my own devices, I think.
Okay, so what was one of the programs that you participated in when you
Well,
were
some of the
first?
things that we did also, we networked with other resources, because we had a $50,000 grant. You're not going to do much with that. So we had to bring in other agencies and utilities to help us do our programming. And one of them was the CYC with Ron Stevens. And that changed the game. Where the club had these gyms and programming, but a lot of our kids couldn't afford it. So they would break into the CYC just to use the gym and graffiti it up because they were getting kicked out. They didn't have a membership, that kind of thing. But by bringing in Ron, allowed us to open the gym up for kids, and these guys became gym rats.
Yeah, and we didn't have to pay for it.
And didn't have to
that
pay
was
for
one
it.
of the things.
And then we later hired them to be gym supervisors as we started still continuing that influx of people, whether it was from Racine, Milwaukee, or Chicago, and not understanding the ropes of Kenosha. So these guys became supervisors to the gym, or just centennials of the gym, taking care of the facility.
And I think it was also instrumental or helped to further identify, because as young people, we understood and knew who they were, and so that was just one.
So you kind of watched out for the wrong element.
Well, absolutely, because once we did have the opportunity to be in the gym, we didn't want to mess it up, and so just being able to talk to those guys, say, hey, we're not doing that over here, kind of thing.
Okay, and you say wanting to know where the influx was coming from. Does that mean you didn't think there was any ingrown gang issue, that there was all coming from outside? Or?
Well, what we ended up seeing was a lot of our gang formation was to combat what was coming into the neighborhood. Prime example over at Lincoln neighborhood, a lot of their gangs were just to protect themselves. One thing we figured out that a lot of the gangs back then were about the drug scene and how they would set up shop on a Thursday night or a Friday night, and sell their stuff and do their thing and kind of influence other kids, and by Sunday morning they're gone. And they would do their havoc and try to run that neighborhood, and you saw families and kids try to battle it. It became violent. Younger and younger people were getting involved because if you didn't genuflect to the group, they would recruit you or make your life miserable or your family.
And also think about the number of bars that was just in that Lincoln neighborhood. When you have places like bars where people tend to congregate and hang out, that element sort of tends to follow. So just in the Lincoln neighborhood.
There was a little joke going by that Kenosha was a test zone for self-abuse. I mean, there were that many bars. You got to remember AMC was, one of the biggest employers. And at 17, you could get a job there making, $15 an hour or something
At that
a young
time, 15
age.
was
Yeah.
a lot of money. Yeah.
So they had all these bars around. So that was another issue, not that we could control that. But nevertheless, you're right. All the bars and liquor stores that were around those neighborhoods played a big role.
Okay. So you mentioned Ron Stevens helping out. Did he get any money for memberships for these kids, or was there no money necessary?
Well, the thing is, we're bringing in 150 kids. This thing grew so big. Okay. I mean, we started out in the 3 neighborhoods with 10, 15 kids in each neighborhood. You're talking about 30 kids. But yet it grew so big that Ron went in front of the city council and asked for some community development block grant money. And they were able to demonstrate the need. A couple of agencies came together and described the need. Law enforcement was with us also.
Organizations as well. I remember the Kiwanis was one of
the big Rotary jumped on board,
yes.
Helping fund certain things. But to show the need, Human Services had the numbers. Look how many kids were putting into the system. I mean, back then it was probably $80,000 to $90,000 a year to lock up someone in corrections. So what we did was keeping them out of the system saved them tons of money. So it was a win-win situation for the city, especially when the officers were getting a lot of calls in these areas. The gang unit that they put forth during that time frame, these guys were about building relationships, not just smashing heads, that kind of thing. It was a different approach. The community policing took a big role, but I thought Kenosha was ahead of the game by identifying the officers who could build those relationships. Yeah. You talked about midnight basketball. We called it late night because we didn't do it at midnight. But as we were able to serve the younger people, there was the older population still, 18 and above. They were the movers and the shakers, so we needed to do something for them, and that's why we started the late night basketball.
And adult open gym.
And the adult open gym, yeah. We did a number of different things for them to be a part of. And it worked out really well because even some of them that were involved with the law, Friday night was probably the safest night to be out back then. If they had an issue with law enforcement, those guys would tell them, hey, come see me on Monday. The next day, I'm not going to chase you, you come. And it worked out for both of us because we did not have a single incident, even after everything was over. You're talking about packing the gym with how many people, Lloyd? Because we went from 9 till midnight.
Yeah, so with different teams, over 100.
Yeah, and then people coming to watch, that kind of thing. And a lot of the younger kids that came were just oohing and eyeing at the talent Kenosha had. Just unbelievable talent. And they were able to showcase it in a good structured setting. But more importantly, we were just keeping them busy I mean, that was the whole thing. We even had some of the coaches that were job recruiters, that kind of thing. And, you know, we did those little seminars where they would talk to them about getting a job or cleaning up your record or needing a lawyer, whatever. Food programs. We had people that would come and do a little talk for them. We didn't do it all the time. We did it just as we needed.
So they'd be there on occasion during late night basketball?
Yep.
Yes.
You're not
Passing out
playing, so
business
let's-
cards, you know, that kind of thing. And as we saw needs, we would try and help out.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And I think they came to understand that if they wanted to truly get in touch with the people that needed it most, generally you could find them there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you participated in late night basketball.
Yes.
What were some of the other things you remember about participating in the programs?
Well, not just basketball, but camping trips, and just and the mentoring sort of group, so to speak, to just give us that outlet, that opportunity to talk and partner with not just our mentors, but our peers as well, people that was our age, and just talk about some of the commonalities or similarities, things that we were going through.
Okay. And do you remember any of your camping trips?
Oh yes, I do. I do. I remember them. I'm pretty sure I remember them all. They were truly some of my best childhood memories, really. Just simply because as a young person, being raised in an economically depressed household, I didn't have an opportunity to do a lot. So when we did have an opportunity to do these things, they were definitely memorable because it got us out of our neighborhood that we're used to being in and taking us to something else and exposing us to different things. Nature. I had never been fishing in my life. And, you know, I could identify a hook, but I certainly didn't know what goes on the end of it.
And he's speaking the truth,
Yeah.
because a lot of these kids never been out of Kenosha. And to be in the woods, and we were telling them there's lions, you know, tigers and bears out there.
That was just to keep us alive.
Yeah, and they wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
But I think it was a two-way street, you know, because I got to learn about the kids. They put their guard down. They ended up talking about some real things. And I guess that's where our relationship comes into play. Tell them a little bit about our late nights, or our overnights.
Oh yeah,
that we did.
We used to have these things we call them the overnight. We call them sleepover overnight, basically lock-in type things. And we would get together, a group of kids, as many as 20 kids, and we'd be in the gym, and that's where we go. We play sport, basketball, whatever it is. Throw the football around, watch movies. They set up a big screen or whatever, and we watch movies. We eat pizza, and we talked. We talk, and I think for myself, if I really think about it, that's really where I really started to develop that bond, so to speak, and say, you know what, maybe things could be a little bit different.
It created that brotherhood, and which was the greatest diversion that we could have had. They're all looking out for each other. They had to earn that overnight. This wasn't just something you came. You had to get it signed. We went to the schools.
Stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble. Yeah. And then we had other agencies that would come in, or the Rotary. They provided the breakfast, the pancakes in the morning. Duke's Electronics, who would give us the videotapes. Boy, are we dating ourselves, huh? Videotapes to watch all night. That kind of thing.
First time I ever heard of Beta.
And you know, and then the kids would get a certificate for showing up and doing well, and we ran those monthly. That was a long year, 2 years doing the overnights, you know, because it's a long day and a long night. But nevertheless, the kids, I think they got something to shoot for, and I thought that was unique, that the kids all wanted to get on there. We had to turn some kids down or move them to the next month. You know, that kind of thing. But they became our guardians. They were the ones setting the tempo. And our biggest gang diversion piece was cutting off the recruitment. So if they didn't join the gangs, we were doing our job.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about the creation of a brotherhood with the kids that were participating in these things. You're kind of setting up, if you will, a club, a group.
I call him my brother's keeper.
And
you know,
against the other groups that want to get you involved in things you don't want them involved in. It's kind of like a good gang versus somebody
Sure.
from outside.
And for a lot of those kids, they had to walk that fine line, like
Yeah,
you said you
absolutely.
did. You know, they knew where the trouble was, and they knew how to get out of it also. You know, you're going to hang out with us at the park? No, I got this game. No, I got to go meet with Mr. Dennis or Mr. Gary, or they had a social worker if they were court involved. So they learned that terminology.
And I also say once the gangs understood and identified the kids that were participating in those programs, they left us alone for the most part.
It was too much work
Yeah.
to get you involved. One of the big things they always asked myself and Dennis, so how do the gangs look at you? You know, we're taking recruitment from them. That was a high wire act to walk.
Right.
But we were able to help families out in situations. If their kids needed a job, we'd help them. If their kids needed something to do, we'd help them. If they needed help in court, we'd go to court with them and try to explain what was going on, that kind of thing. Some of them needed, like I said, jobs, and their parents were going through stuff. Our agency was a mental health agency.
Or in a
so
lot of
we
cases, food.
Yeah,
Food.
a very basic need. The Shalom Center opened up, and boy, that helped a lot of our families. That food pantry, that they were able to just come in. So it wasn't just an embarrassment to go there. They would come see us at the center, get a free meal, and then go home. Or their parents could come in and get some food and go back. Times were tough back then, too. Kind of reminds me of our current situation that we'll be facing down the road.
Okay, and what is the current situation we'll be facing down the
Well,
road?
you have our immigration issue where families are hiding. We're dealing with the shutdown now. The SNAP program's going to get reduced. Where are those families going to get food? So we're going to be facing that battle. We do things over at the Shalom Center. They hire some of our kids during our summer employment program, and you just see the long lines. Families are hurting. People are kind of disappearing for fear of the law. So that's the current climate right now that we're dealing with now.
Okay, and you talked about your time working being in the programs, growing up in the programs.
Yes.
You talked about earlier that your parents had divorced.
Sure.
And the struggles of your struggles and how that translates to who you talk to and deal with today,
Sure.
right? How does that work?
I think through my struggles and through some of the things that I went through as a young man, I think it's easier for me to make a connection with some of those young people that I see that are in need of our services because I've been where they've been. I've been that young man or that young lady, and so I tend to understand a little bit of what they're going through. And I think through that, it allows me to be able to make that connection and, let them know that it's not the end of the world. And let's have this conversation. Let's talk.
How do you approach a young man? I mean, you've been there. I understand you. How do you go?
Yeah, I mean, and it really depends on what the situation is. It could be a myriad of things. I mean, if it's a young man that's having a behavioral issue, and there's different levels of behavioral issue. There may be the young man who's just giving his teacher a hard time, but it also may be the young man who's taking weapons to school. It just really depends. But again, it's about being able to have that open conversation, open, honest conversation, and let them know that. You understand, but these are the hurdles that you're going to come against if you continue to do this. And just being in that situation lends credibility, because in some cases, I may not know the kid, but I know their parents, and in a lot of cases, I know their grandparents. And so when I talk to them, they're able to go back to their parent or grandparent and say, hey, I was talking to Mr. Lloyd today, and they said, oh, I went to high school with him, that kind of thing.
Kind of breaks the ice.
Sure.
Okay, and so as director of the outreach, what does your programming do with what is youth empowerment involved in? How does it work?
Yeah, and so youth empowerment, I mean, we're in schools. We also offer programming at the club, which is the Boys and Girls Club. And one of the things that we do is we try to get together and we try to teach them things about financial literacy, healthy eating habits. Whatever the need is, we try to address it. And if we don't have that expertise within our building, and then we partner with outside agencies to try to help us do that.
Okay. You mentioned being in schools. What do you do in schools, and what schools do you go to?
So we're in most of the middle school, well, all the middle schools, just about, right?
Yeah, we do a boys to men's group using the Street Smarts program. Talking with kids about just growing up and being a young man and talking about their families. Those are crucial. But before we even do that, they got to trust us.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
How do you break the ice? Where do you know that I've reached that point that he trusts me?
Well, I think for me, one of the things I try to do to gain that trust is, just the club itself in general is a big icebreaker, because through the club they can play basketball. There's just so many different things for them to do. As an outreach director, I try to participate in that. If they're down there shooting, hey, I'll feed them the ball and talk with them while they're doing that. I'll referee a game. Whatever it is, and then through that you get a chance to know them. You get to know the names. You get to know who's who, and then at some point you're going to be speaking to all those individuals, and that's where it starts. It starts by planting that seed, I would guess.
Something I found out about Lloyd, because I've known him for how many years now?
39 years.
Part of what you do is you got to listen.
Yeah.
And the keys are going to be given to you by the kid. Trouble at home, trouble with teachers.
You find that the kids are often defensive?
Right away.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, you got to remember, with the kids that get identified and get sent to us, right away, well, they're sending me here because I'm bad. Let's talk what bad is, okay? But we try to throw in the fun stuff too. Then they get to see us. Well, I guess we're not that bad. We offer them a lot of free stuff. Membership at the Y, free activities. We feed them, which is always a great icebreaker, isn't it? Because kids will talk. You just got to get them at that point, and that's crucial to what we do. And then they don't want to go away after our 8-week session. So we do that in the schools. We'll also talk to some of the counselors or principals that have kids that may need more one-on-one, and we'll take them on as a caseload. So we'll do that. We'll also educate families, if they need be, about the gang situation, or the different affiliations, or if their kids are dabbling in it. We try to educate teachers, the school system, on that. I'm a gang specialist. I just don't wear it on my chest, but nevertheless I do trainings on what to look for, what to do, and then how to deal with the problem. So I'm going full circle to what we do in the community, and that was a big part of it. Not only doing the grassroots part of it and the programming, but more importantly, we had to educate people on what we're seeing. You can't put your head in the sand in this. If you ignore it, it just continues to grow like a cancer. And do nothing, what happens? Like I said earlier, it'll kill your school, it'll kill your neighborhood. And what we mean by that is, look at the money you're going to have to throw at locking up people. That's crazy. Right now it's $100,000 a year to lock up one kid. I don't know how many kids we have currently in our system, but if you have 10, that's $1 million in a year. So that's why this kind of program, I thought at that time, was very unique. We copied different models, we did a couple different things, but nevertheless, it was important to do that. So in my role, at least, we're doing the education piece, but more importantly, building that relationship with kids. The other thing is you get to hear about what's going on, because they'll talk about it freely.
And one of the things I want to add, and I think it's important, you asked earlier, how do I identify with those kids? Well, this is what I would say. I remember what it's like to have my lights turned off as a teenager. You don't have any electricity. You're in a food desert. And even if you weren't, you didn't necessarily have the resources to go out and buy that food. Being in a single family household. and seeing, maybe different guys come in and out. And so if you're a young person, 12, 13 years old, how do you navigate that? How do you deal with that? And if I was a kid, I probably wouldn't be very happy either. And so the expectation that they're going to go to school and be this great productive person, I don't think that's a realistic expectation. But through my experiences and coming out on the other end of that, that's how I make that connection, because I've gone through it. And so I know what that's like. And so I know how to start that conversation.
Okay. And you mentioned the evolving gang issues. Have you seen a difference from 1986?
Oh, a big difference to
it's
where we
like,
are today.
and how you learn, how do you communicate to parents and others what to look for? What's not the same as it was in '86. There are different things to look for.
Yeah, you kind of have to keep up with the trends because they change. And now with our mobile phones, that has changed the game. A lot of kids go on Facebook and they're
Social
identifying
media.
with gangs and stuff on that. We tell the parents, you got to look at what your kids are sending out. They'll be taking pictures with guns, drugs at
Money.
parties. They'll be making threats through that. You better take a look at what your kids are doing. That's the difference from where we were back in the 90s with social media. You got music artists. We're living in a different time. Have we seen the gang problem decrease or increase? We've seen a decrease, but it's gone in a different way now. More hybrid gangs rather than the big super gangs that I mentioned earlier. A lot of times it's just family. And that's one of our biggest challenges is how do you convince a young man to get away from the gang stuff when your parents are gang members? How do you do that? And it's a challenge. You got a challenge on what they want. And for even some of the older gang members that are now parents, they know us and they're willing to buy in because they don't want to see their kid go down that path either. In reality.
Are these parents, you said they are still gang members, or they were gang members and now want to make sure their kids don't get involved?
I think they were gang members, and that was just their way of life. But that's why it's so important to get the parents buy-in too, because you could take a child out of the situation for a few hours, but at some point they go back home. And if the family, if you have 7 brothers and sisters and 5 of your brothers are in the gang,
or your cousins, or even the neighborhood somewhat, with the older crowd, it's a tough battle.
What is the reception today from parents versus initially from parents when you started this diversion and working?
Well, a lot of parents were fed up with what their neighborhoods were turning into, just didn't know where to go. Was there a lot of trust in the police? Not at that time. There was some hesitation to get them involved. But like I said, with the help of our gang unit who built relationships with those families, here, you call me, and they were there for them. They helped us identify a lot of those actors that didn't need to be in town. As a matter of fact, one of the raids they did, I believe, came from a tip. And when they looked into the house, they had everything into the closet, all the gang literature, who was who, but right there.
Basically the structure.
The whole structure was right there. So that was very helpful from those parents. Parents don't want to involve the law enforcement, I mean, you need to, but there's that distrust now with everything going on too. But hopefully we can get them with our SROs. We got some great SROs in our high school and middle schools that
And they are?
Resource officers, okay? And they're a go-to right now. I know some kids don't know they're a police officer, but on the side, some of those guys really do a good job with those kids, explaining certain things and being able to communicate with them resources, but also what they can do legally and not do legally. there's a lot of things going on underground that it's hard to get a pulse, and that's why we need those resource officers in the school. They play a big role in what we do.
Okay, and your job as outreach director is going to change?
Yes, my role, well, the position that I currently serve in will still be there. I just won't be in that position.
Okay. So what will that mean to what you've been doing and what you would like to see being done?
Well, I think we'll continue on. I just think going into the role that I'll be going into, that I'll have more of an understanding of what's going on. I would like to think that I'm more open-minded. Sometimes, it takes new blood, new ideas to come into a role, and so that to help it to evolve. And I think that I could be the catalyst for that.
And I think part of that is Lloyd's understanding of outreach, how that plays a real big impact, how we need to do more of that. So that not only for the club, but other agencies
Sure.
that we can do joint things together with. We've had a great relationship with Human Services, being able to do that, the Youth Empowerment Program, and our Summer Youth Employment. They're really buying into what we're trying to do with kids and keeping them out of the court system.
As well as a place called the Beyond High School, who partners with the kids and helps them figure out what they want to do after high school. What kind of colleges, maybe a four-year college isn't for everyone, and maybe they should probably go to a tech or take up a trade and that kind of thing. So help them identify those kinds of things.
How do you do that?
How do I do that?
How do you get kids interested or thinking about education after high school?
Well, chances are, if they make it through high school, I mean, they're in that area where they're thinking like, God, what am I going to do now?
Do you
And
have
so-
a program to help them
Well, it's
see
an
what's out
outside
there?
agency that we partner with called the Beyond High School. Yes, the Beyond High School.
I mean, college tours or?
Yes, and we do college tours and things of that nature to take them out there and give them that exposure and help them to understand that there's a little bit more out in the world besides what's going on in your current situation.
And how did that affect you?
How does it affect me?
You, that you went into the programs?
I think it was
you
very-
took advantage of the programs. And what did you do after you
Sure.
graduated from high school, I assume?
I think
right?
it was very instrumental. Just being able to get outside of my own neighborhood, and I did that through the program, and maybe in some of the college tours, and just again, Duke's Electronics. You mentioned him earlier. It was up in like Antigo, Wisconsin, I believe.
Yeah.
I had never been. First of all, I'd never been that far up north ever, and I'm sure it was a little bit of a culture shock even for the people that resided there to see us, a group of black and brown kids coming into their area, and so it was difficult. Well, I wouldn't say difficult; it was different, but it also gave me, I'm looking around like, wow, this is nice, it's nature. And so for me, it made me want to continue to explore, to think about some of the different things or avenues that I could take to overcome my current situation.
So did you think that you would ever come back to the Boys and Girls Club and have a role like you have?
No, I did not. if I'm
What
being
did
honest.
you think you were going to do?
Exactly what I did. I went to college and graduated. Got a job. My first job after college was in Illinois, so I lived there and worked there. But through coming back to Wisconsin, I volunteered. I still have friends that worked at the club, and I would come and visit them. And then I would end up. He said, "Hey, come out and help us chaperone this basketball game." And so I started that way. And then I started coming in and helping referee. And then I started coming in and helping coach. And before you know, I was volunteering. And then once Dennis actually retired, they needed someone to fill that role, and that's how I became involved.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about Dennis, because we've mentioned his name off and on from the beginnings with you after this study and launching that diversion program, the years, programs, all he's done with the outreach. Tell me about Dennis.
Well, Dennis is a hometown kid. Nobody knew Kenosha better than Dennis. grew up in the Lincoln neighborhood area. He went to school at Oshkosh, where later on I went. So Dennis came back, worked for Court Services Unit for many years. The trust they had with Dennis, just the way he handled families, he would get all the tough cases. Let me tell you, especially the out-of-town families and stuff.
Is that how you divide it up?
Yeah, well, I don't know how they do the Court Services Unit, but I understand that Dennis had a lot of the tough cases, and we would partner up with cases, and we were very successful with that, and part of that was just getting to know the families. Dennis introduced me to this community. If it wasn't for him, I don't know how I even get accepted here. I'm from Racine originally. So in 1985, I came to work for the agency, and me and Dennis built a great relationship. He introduced me to people in the neighborhood that you need help, this is who you go to. They know what's going on. And different people in positions. I talked about Mary Lou Mahone, with the Lincoln Center. Lavella Haas, just a number of people. Irene Santos over at the Spanish Center. These are rocks of the neighborhood, and if it wasn't for that, Dennis taking the time to do that. But more importantly, Dennis built a great relationship with the court system and with Human Services, that they were able to say, let's try this project. This gang issue is becoming more and more of an issue. We have kids coming through. We don't even understand it. And as Dennis started understanding it, and that's kind of how we built our relationship, was working with these tough families, that we were able to get that project off. If it wasn't for Dennis's commitment here, and he knew a lot of the people here, so that was beneficial. A lot of the athletes. Dennis was an athlete, a basketball player, you name it. So a lot of people knew him. For an African-American male to be in the court system and to be trusted on both sides, mind you, that was a challenge. And here this man just overcame all that. Dennis didn't walk with a big stick.
Not at all.
A gentle giant that would sit and listen and really try to help. I kind of tease my downfall and Dennis's downfall is that we overextend ourselves. It's hard to say no to somebody in need. It really is. Dennis would commute from Milwaukee every day, late at night. Sometimes stay with his mom and dad, and back to work the next day. It wasn't a 9-to-5 job.
No, he gave so much of himself.
Yeah, I mean, this guy worked through the weekend, that kind of thing. But it just showed his commitment to this community, to these families. He was him and Ron Stevens gave that big push to go from CYC to the Boys and Girls Club to get that chapter here, that national organization that had more money, more programming that we could tap into. And eventually, they started over in the Wilson neighborhood in a church, an old church. And Dennis, we started doing programming there. They had a little area that we made into a gym, and we were able to do programming there. We started a lunch program during the summer. We started that with a work program, and it just kept growing and growing to eventually the building getting built over on 52nd and 14th. So he was a catalyst for that. Him and Wally Grafton, who was one of the first directors over at Boys and Girls Club, built that relationship with the national organization, bringing in monies, bringing in programming, and getting that building built. CYC was instrumental too, because they kind of took a back seat but led the charge, because it's not the CYC anymore, but we do still offer CYC programming. Ron and Dennis were like this. They really built a good insight to what our community needed. And Ron was the kind of guy that wouldn't wait. Let's do it. And then Dennis would go, okay, let's do it. We didn't know how we were going to do it, but it got done.
And then the community itself coming together. You know,
Yeah.
a couple of really big contributors or people that were families that were instrumental in helping to get the building built. The Troja family, the
Yeah.
Madrano family. I mean, they gave a lot to help make that happen. So we certainly appreciate them.
Yeah, Bob Wirch at
Yeah.
the state level, I mean, speaking for us, fighting for money for what we were trying to do. Because you've got to remember, it was probably the gang unit in Kenosha, the law enforcement was the second unit, but they were the longest active gang unit in the state.
When was it created?
Back in 85, 86. Pfluger, Salas, Keating, those guys. And I got to mention this. Yeah, Booker. When we had Dennis's services over at the club, two guys took it really hard from the gang unit, Mike Salas and Larry Keating, who were on that unit, and they took it really tough because they know what this man put in. Well loved. Some people thought he wasn't real, that he was up to no good. Very few of those. But he's just a main hole. I mean, nowadays if you say Boys and Girls Club or Kenosha, you say Dennis Bedford.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person he was.
What do you have to say about that?
I would totally agree. The thing that I remember most about this is just how caring and how giving of himself and his time that he truly was. You know, and never needed recognition, because that wasn't the kind of person that Dennis was. So if you never mentioned his name, he was probably even better with that. But you know, he was always willing to go out of his way to help, and that's what I remember most.
He wouldn't turn down a challenge either.
No.
There was a need, Dennis was there. You know, right out of his own pocket if he had to. You know.
So even for me, just to come full circle and so many years later to still be working with Mr. Vargas, with Gary, and being able to work with Dennis, and just to see how that relationship evolved,
Yeah.
you know, developed and evolved. It's amazing. It's a story within itself, I think.
And I enjoyed that time, us three being together and just doing what we did.
Yeah.
So let's look at the future, short future. Just where does this go, and how does it continue? How does it develop? Does it evolve into something else? What's next?
You know what? This is what I would say. I know what I hope is 20, 30 years from now, another young man can be sitting here and talking about how the Boys and Girls Club, how Mr. Lloyd or Mr. Gary made a difference in their lives, because I know for myself, that's what I can say. I can truly say the Boys and Girls Club, the CYC, Mr. Gary, Mr. Dennis truly made a difference in my life. And I remember as a young man, there was times that if these gentlemen weren't doing programming or involved in everything, I probably wouldn't have eaten that night. And you know, I don't know if you know or have ever experienced that, but it's, you know, it's tough.
Devastating.
Yeah.
It's devastating. So, and how many of our kids come to school hungry, you know, and can't share that with anybody? I see the future really bright because of things we were able to do in the early stages. Because now these guys are in their 40s and 50s, you know.
Yeah.
We were able to expand also. Something that we didn't touch on was our school liaisons. They're all gang specialists also, but we raised them, and now they're in their 40s and 50s in the schools, being able to identify kids, give us a call, can we do something with them, that kind of thing. So we're full circle, and those younger people that are into the school district are gonna really propel that into the next generation, I think. I think we gave them enough knowledge, education, we've given them a path, and now it's time for them to kind of take it to the next level. And I'm really hopeful. I really am. I think I hopefully left the place, going to leave the place in a lot better situation than when I came into.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.